Welcome back to Library Choice YouTube channel. Today's class we are going to learn how to make this single shoulder cupped corset. So it's a shoulder corset. You can see that the shoulder is cut together with the cup, and it's just one single piece as we have seen. So we are going to learn how to do this, how to create boning channels, and how to create channels for our underwire as well. So all of this will be learned in this tutorial. If this is something you would like to learn, kindly stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. Thank you. Okay, so to make this, I have drafted my pattern as usual. This is a full pattern, as you can see. That's the difference. It doesn't stop at the waistline, it extends to whatever length that you want. It's a full blouse, so it just extends to whatever length you want. So for me, remember my waistline is 18 inches, so I just extended it to around 23.5, which is the full length that I want for this blouse. So I'm working with a shoulder that I already have a tutorial on that on the channel, so if you don't know how to do it, you can check it out. So this is my armhole line, this is my bust point, this is my under bust, and this is my waistline, and this is the full length of the blouse. So I took my dart 1 inch on both sides on the under bust. I did the same thing on the waistline, and then on the hip line, which is the full length, I just took 1/4 inch on both sides. The person is not so big, so I just put 1/4 inch, and then I connected it just like this. So that is what we have here. So this is the second part. This is the back pattern. I'm just going to set it aside so that we can work on the front pattern. So we have done something similar, but you guys requested for a tutorial on the shoulder one-piece shoulder corset, which is why we are doing this. So I'm sure you'll understand this easily. So because it's a one-piece corset, so I'm just going to be sewing it on the under bust area. So to be able to achieve this, I'm going to close this shoulder dart, and then I'm going to transfer it to my waist dart. So what I'm going to do now is to open one of the darts on the waistline so that I can easily close the shoulder dart. So now after opening it up, now I'm just going to go ahead and close up my shoulder dart just like this. Okay, so after closing it, I'm going to hold it down with a masking tape. So you can see now that the dart is transferred to the waist. So after doing that, I'm going to determine the depth of my corset. That's how deep you want it to be on the center front. So for me, from the shoulder point, I think around 8.5, which is my armhole line, is okay for me. You can work with whatever depth that you want. So to draw out my first cup for the first side, there is this distance between each of the cup. So for that distance, I want it to be around 1 inch. So unfold, remember this is just a half scale, it's going to be 1/2 inch on each side. So here I'm going to mark 1/2 inch. I'm going to mark the same 1/2 inch on my bust point as well, and then using my curve, I'm going to connect all of this to my under bust. Okay, so I'm working with this curve, and you can take it with the 1/2 inch that I marked there. So I'm just going to draw my curve. Okay, so now to draw out my neckline as well, on the center point, okay, you're going to measure how open you want the bust to be, so the depth that you want for your bust. So depending on the height you want, I'm just going to be using my bust point, that's the nipple point, the fullest part of my bust, as the reference point. So from there now, I'm going to measure between 4 to 5 inches upwards. So I'm just going to try to leave it at around 4.5 or 4.25, which is here. I don't want it so high, so you can check it again. So checking it from the shoulder point, I see that I have around 6.5, which is fine for me. So now I'm going to connect from that point to my neck depth using my curved ruler. Okay, so you can work with whatever neckline you want. This is the neckline that I choose to work with. So this is what I have. So now this is a shoulder corset, just like we know. So on my shoulder line, from the outer corner here, I'm going to measure the strap, the amount of strap that I want. It can be 2 inches, it can be 2.5, it can be 3 inches, depending on how wide you want your strap to be. So for me, around 2 inches or 2.25 is fine for me. So I'm going to measure it there, and then I'm going to connect my neckline. So from here now, I'm going to connect it to that 2 inches strap that I have there. So you can see I am placing my ruler, my curve, and then I'm going to connect it and then just find a way to blend everything together. Okay, so this is the neckline that I have. You can work with whatever neckline that you choose to work with. So now after drawing this, now I'm going to complete my bust cup. So I have an allowance here. I have an allowance of around 1 inch here. So from my actual measurements, I'm just going to come in by 1 inch or 1.5 inches, and then from there I'm going to take my cuff to connect from that place to my under bust for the other side of my cup. Okay, so I'm connecting like this, and you can see that my cup is now complete. So now you can cut this out. So I'm going to cut the waist dart first. Okay, the excess that I have there, I'm going to cut it out. Okay, and then I'm going to remove my upper part. So to do this, I'm cutting out the neckline. So you cut the 1/2 inch that you measured there, and then you just cut following the shape that you have for your neckline, and then you cut out your cup. Okay, so this is the first side, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the second side. Okay, so this is the cup, and this is going to be my center front. Okay, so you can cut this part on fold if you don't want to have joining, or you cut it separately if you want to have a joining at the center part. So it's totally up to you. This is the side front, and this is the cup. So here we are just going to, you can see that it's just one piece. We did not separate it. So after cutting it, I'm just going to fold it like this and then sew my bust cup. So now we move straight to the back. The back is simple. I already drafted my pattern, and then the shoulder as well. This is my waist dart. From my shoulder point, I just measured what I have on my shoulder, divided it by 2, and then from there I connected this to my dart points on the shoulder as well. So what I'm going to do now is just to create the neckline for the back. So to create the neckline, you need to measure what you have for your shoulder points in front. Remember, you're going to sew them together, or you can just place it to mark it out. So I'm bringing in my front shoulder now, and then I'm placing it to mark where my first shoulder stops, which is here. Okay, so after marking that point, you need to note the depth you want for your neckline. So for me, I want it a little low, so I'm going to be working with around 10 inches for my neck depth. So I'll extend it to my zipper allowance, and then you can use a curve, or you can just make it a V shape depending on the shape you want for your back neckline. So I'm using this curve now to connect mine, and then this is the neck depth that I'm going to work with. So I'll just go ahead and cut that out as well. So I'm going to cut it off now, and then I'm just going to shape the side of my blouse, and that's all. So shaping the side is optional, but it just gives it a final look, a really final look. Okay, makes it final. So here on the side here, I'm going to come up by 2.5 or 3 inches, and then I'm going to take my curved ruler and connect it to my dart point like this. Okay, so what I have done here now, I'll take the side of the front as well, and then mark the 2.5 inches, and then shape the front side as well. So I'll forget that, and like I said, it's optional. So now after shaping it, you just cut it out, and then you go ahead to cut this on our fabric. So I've cut the side of the front. Now I'm going to cut the side of the back as well. So I'm cutting my back as one single piece. Okay, I'm not going to remove anything. I'm just going to take my dart here when I cut it out. Okay, so these are our pattern pieces. This is the front, and this is the back. So I'll go ahead and cut it on my fabric like I said, and I'm going to add necessary allowances because I'm going to be using a plastic boning for this. So my seam allowance is going to serve as my channels for my boning. So I'll use 0.75 inches seam allowance for the dart line, and then on the center as well, I think I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut it in two separate spaces so that I can have seam allowance at the center as well to insert my boning. So it's totally up to you and the options that you want to go for. So I am going to cut them on my fabric. This is the center front, and like I said, my center front, I decided not to cut it on fold because I want to use my seam allowance as my casing for the boning. I can see how much allowance I left. So this is the center front, this is the side front, this is the cup together with the upper part, and this is the back. Remember I said my back is just going to be a single piece, and I'm just going to hold my darts. So for each of these I cut 4, 2 for main fabric and 2 for lining. If you are not lining it, you just cut 2 of it. So for this as well, I cut 4, 2 for my main bodies and 2 for my lining, likewise all the rest. So now to strengthen the fabric, I'm going to be working with a paper stay. So I'm working with this paper stay. It's very soft, it's softer than gum stay. I'm working with this paper stay for the lining and gum stay for the main bodies, and then for the cup I'm going to be using this felt, okay, this wadding to pad it on the cup area. So I'll go ahead and cut them, then fuse them with my iron, and then I'll bring it back for us to see what it looks like. Okay, so I've gone ahead to add my interfacings to all of them, as you can see. So the next thing now is to start to sew them. So for the main bodies, just like we have it on the pattern, for the back I'm going to go ahead and hold all of these darts, and then for the front I'm going to sew the sides together, okay, the sides of the front as well as the center front. Remember the center front is slashed into 2 as well, so I'm going to go ahead and join it together so that I can have them as one piece. I'll do this for both the lining and the main fabric, and then for the upper part I am going to add my wadding to it. So depending on how you want to add it, so this is how I have cut it out. Let me shift this so that we can see it better. Okay, so this is how I have cut it out. It's going to be placed like this. You can see that there is allowance for sewing on the sides, so if it's too much you can also trim it down. So once you place it like this, you can gum it or sew it, or you can just use your zigzag machine to sew this together like this. So you can see how it has formed your cup for you. So you sew this separately, and then you sew the main body separately as well. So after sewing the main bodies with this, what you just need to do is to put your cup inside it. Okay, so if you sew your main body separately like this, you just need to put this inside your pattern just like this, and then you just sew it all around. Okay, so you just make sure that it sits well, and then you just hold it all around with your stitch. So whichever one you decide to work with is fine. So I'm going to go ahead to do all of this now, and then I'll bring it back to show us what it looks like. Okay, so I have gone ahead to sew it. You can see this is the center front. I joined it, and then I ironed down my seam allowance. Then I now sew the seam allowance on both sides so that I can insert my boning from here. Like I said, I'm working with a plastic bone, so I'm just going to insert it through the holes that I created using my seam allowance. So you just need to iron this very well. This is the lining, so I did the same thing for the lining. And then for the back, I went ahead to hold my darts just like I explained, and then I'm going to go ahead to iron it. So I did the same thing for the 4 back bodies that I have as well. So now this is my cup side, and then I just sew the cup just like this. Okay, so when you get to your open part, remember there is a seam allowance there, so you just come up by 1 inch or 0.75 inches before you lock your stitch. So this is what it looks like right now. So you just go ahead and iron this well as well. So like I said, you can either place your wadding together with it and iron, or you can sew your cup separately and then you sew this separately, then you sew them inside this. So this is my cup right here, okay, and then I've gone ahead to use my basting stitch to hold this together. So you can see this is what the cup looks like now. So it has a gum here, so you can just place it on your pattern like this, and then you gum it together. So I'm looking for the one that corresponds with this, okay. So you can just place it like this. You can also use your hemming glue to just hold them together, and then you place it like this and use your hot iron to glue them together once you know it is set. Or you can also just go ahead and stitch it down just like I did for mine. So you can see I just stitch it down the seam allowance, and then I'm going to trim off this excess. So this is what it looks like now, and then you go ahead and give it a good press. So now after doing all of this, the next thing now is to start fixing our cup inside this space that we have. So you just bring in your cup, you make sure that this dart area matches each other like this, and then you just sew it all around. So you do the same thing for your lining as well. So after fixing the cup, the next thing to do is to sew the sides together, okay. That's the front and back. I'm just going to join them on the shoulder and then on the sides. So this will be joined separately. You join your lining separately, and then you join the main fabric separately, so that we can use them to turn out each other. Okay, so I have sewn it as you can see. So you make sure that your dart line aligns. So this is what it looks like on the inside. So we are going to be fixing a bra wire to this on the round the underbust area. What I just need to do now is, that's why I've not cut off this seam allowance. I'm just going to flip the seam allowance like this, and then you sew it down so that it can be a channel for you to insert your bra wire. And then for the back, if you want to make yours, you can just cut through your dart, okay. Remember this dart that we have here, you can cut through it completely so that you have two separate pieces, and then you can sew it and fix your boning as well. But for this tutorial, I'm only fixing boning to the front. I'm not going to be fixing boning to the back. So please, if you need to fix boning on yours, you can just also work with a regular bone, and then you just sew it on it like this, or you just create a channel with maybe your bias. That's if you don't want to open your dart, or you don't want your seam allowance to be your boning casing, okay. So now, like I said, the next thing we need to do now is to place this now and sew the shoulder as well as the side seam, and then you do the same thing for the lining. So I've joined my lining on the shoulder and the side. I just want to quickly explain to us that if you want to fix boning to your side as well, all you just need to do now is to trim down the seam allowance that you have on the side, okay. Fixing boning on the side also gives structure, especially if you are cinching the waist. It's going to give a little bit of support. So after trimming down your seam allowance, you're going to iron it down just like we did for these ones, and then after ironing it down, you sew it on the side as well to create another casing. That's if you are fixing boning to the side as well. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the shoulder and side for the main bodies as well. Then after that, what you just need to do now is to place the main bodies against the lining, and then we just turn everything out. Okay, so you can see I have sewn the main bodies, and then I also created the channel for my, you can use a boning or you can just use a wire there. So now the next thing I'm going to do is to place my front and back against each other, and then I'll start to match up everything. You match up the shoulder, you match up your neckline, and then you're going to sew it. You match up your back neckline as well. You make sure everything matches just like this, and then I'm going to match up the lower part as well, and then I'll sew everything all around, leaving the side, one of the side, to turn it out, okay. You can also turn it out from your armhole because I'm not closing the armhole yet. So I'll go ahead now and then stitch them all around. So I've gone ahead to pin them against each other. Now you can see now they are all pinned. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to go ahead and then sew them. Okay, so I have sewn it all around now, and then I'm going to turn it out from this armhole area. So the the opening, the boning channels that I created here are just for illustration purpose. This is just to show I did not actually fix boning in mine. So if you are fixing boning in yours, make sure you put in your bonings before you turn it out, and then you make sure your boning is shorter by 1 inch, because you know you need half an inch here to sew this. You don't want it to get to your underbust in case you are putting it before fixing your cup. And then here as well, you can see it cannot get to the hem. Once it gets to this final hem point, you'll not be able to turn it because boning is actually very stiff. So please put in your bonings, insert your bonings before you do all of this turning. And then if you're working with a plastic bone that may be a bit stiff, so it may be very difficult for you to turn it, so you can just top stitch on the lower part. But if you can turn it, you can just open it up on one side of the center back, and then turn it out from there, and then top stitch on it later. So I'm going to notch this now all around where necessary, and then I'll just dip my hand into any of the armhole side, and then I'll bring out everything gently. So after bringing it out like this, it's going to be looking puffy. So now you take it to the ironing table and then give it a good press before we fix our zipper. So I'm trying to bring out every corners. And then you make sure that it is neat both in and out, just like we have it here. Okay, so you can see how neat this is looking. So I'll go and iron it now and then bring it back. Okay, so I've ironed it a bit now, and you can see how beautiful it is looking. So please do a proper ironing. The iron is very raw, and this is what it looks like on the inside. You can see how clean it is on the inside as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and install my zipper, and you can fix any sleeve of your choice to this. Okay, so this is what the corset looks like. You can see the cupped area, and you can see our darts that we took on the cup. So this is the channel that I created for the underwire. If you wish to use an underwire for this, I can use like 1/4 inch boning as well. All of this is just to give it structure, and then this is the channel that we created on the lower bodies of the corset. So you can see that it's a cupped corset, and it has just single cup. It is not joined together at any point. Okay, so you can also place a boning at the side as well, just like I explained. If I want it to be really firm, all of this just make it stronger. I hope you enjoyed making this beautiful tutorial with me. If you enjoyed it, let us know in the comment section. Like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.